Hey everybody, welcome to My Green Pets. I am William Green and we are here at Fantasy Orchids this lovely Saturday morning visiting my orchid collection and seeing what's going on. Let's start out with my multifloral paths, my big slipper orchids. I brought two from Kentucky when I moved. This one is a path Michael Kopovitz, and it has really been shooting up very quickly, a spike from the center there, and you can actually start to see side of the bud pushing up. So that spike is going to be making itself very visible very soon. I'm super excited. This plant bloomed 3 years ago around this time, and it was really, really nice. It's a very pale variety of Michael Kopowitz. The next path is the path Prime Child, and this is Apollo, the largest clone that has ever won an award by the American Orchid Society, and it also seems to be pushing up a bud soon. The growth that it's pushing out of isn't that big, so I'm not quite sure what to expect, but I am very much expecting both of these plants to be in bloom around the same time. That's going to be exciting. The next plant we're going to look at is this Bofium Medusa, and it's got a little spike pushing up in the back. Now, when this blooms, it only has one bloom at a time, and the flower only lasts a few days. But the great thing about this is that it really doesn't have a season for blooming. It just kind of blooms whenever it feels like it. It's also pushing out a new growth there on the side, so looking forward to that coming up soon as well. Then right next to that plant is my Bofium Medusa, and it has got several spikes pushing up. The leaves will look really good. I'm very happy to see that bronzish color along the leaves. But if you look next to the bulbs there, you can see that there are spikes pushing up. And I'm telling you, from being in this greenhouse and getting this afternoon bright light every day, the growth in this thing is just really phenomenal. It's really pushing out growth much more quickly than I'm used to seeing back home, especially for this time of year. Today is actually the autumnal equinox. Days are equal more or less. Days and night are equal, 12-12, and it's really exciting to see this plant really starting to push out spikes as well as some new growth. So we might have new growth pushing out at the same time as well. Next to that we have my Cattleya rex. Now this is one of several plants, but this is the largest, and I'm just so proud of it. I love to just look at the roots. It's interesting because this plant only puts out roots at a specific time of year, and that is after the summer growth has completed, after the newest pseudobulb is done, then it starts pushing out lots of roots. But it's just interesting that that's the only time of year it pushes out roots. So I have to be really careful. I repotted this plant in the fall, actually last winter, and I expected it to start pushing out some new roots when it was repotted, and it didn't. It just sat there and did nothing until the new growth was completed, and then it maintained its schedule. And these are just the other Cattleya rex seedlings that I'm kind of scanning past here. There are about 20 of them at different stages, and I really especially love the mounted ones here. They've been mounted for the past 4 years on these pieces of hickory bark, and you can see that they're now starting to outgrow their mounts, so I'm going to have to get something bigger to attach them to, because otherwise all these roots that you see are just going to run off the wood onto the bench and running into other plants' pots. So I've got to be really careful so that they've got a place to go, but they won't get damaged. I just love looking at the way that the roots meander over that wood, and these plants really do like to be mounted. They like that airflow around their roots, and they don't like to have them bunched up in a pot. Now over to the only Phalaenopsis in my collection. This is a species, Falchiloriana, and it has those beautiful, beautiful gray-green leaves with speckles and stripes, and it's got some really lovely root growth going on here too. And then there's also something very special at the base there. If you can see, let's zoom in up on it. It is a spike pushing its way out, and this is actually quite early for this plant to be pushing out a spike. I think we can attribute it to the cool nights that we receive here in Colorado. Night temperatures can be below 60 degrees even in the summertime sometimes, so those cool night temperatures may have spurred this plant on to pushing out a spike, which is super exciting, which means we're going to get flowers on it earlier than last year. Now this is my biggest bulbophyllum. This is Hal, the Bulbophyllum echinolabium. And I gave him the clonal name of Hal because he reminded me of the robot from 2001: A Space Odyssey. But here's his latest flower pushing out, his bud. And this spike has been growing for the past few months. It's a new spike. The old spikes have all died off. But in addition to that, it's got a new growth coming up, which is good because I was a little concerned that the back bulbs were dying off and I wasn't getting any new growth on it. So I think probably within a week or so that flower will be open. And then finally, let's look back here at the catasetum types. This is Mormodia jumbo world on the left. And its leaves look like they're just about done for the season. It has not had a great season, but hopefully we'll get some flowers on it in the next couple months. Next to it is Cycnodes Wine Delight, very popular FCC winner from the 80s, very often cloned. And this plant has got a nice spike pushing out. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 flowers on it, but I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that all those little pieces are going to end up being flowers. So we'll just have to keep our eye on it, and hopefully we'll get some nice flowers anyway out of it. It's so nice when it blooms. It's got that wonderful cherry cough syrup fragrance. Now, right next door to my green pets are some other people's green pets. There's lots of people that keep their orchids here in Fantasy Orchids. And this is an interesting catasetum hybrid. This is the Millennium Magic Witchcraft. You've probably heard a lot about it. It has very, very dark blooms, and these are just about ready to pop. So looking forward to those. Another neighbor has got some lovely orchids in bloom. In addition to those Cattleyas you see down here, this kind of diminutive little bloom, this is Encyclia radiata. And even though it doesn't really stand out too much, it smells great. It's got a wonderful fragrance, and really the flowers are quite charming. It's got a little spike there, and then there's another spike next to it as well. So every time I walk over to check on my plants, I definitely bend over to give this one a sniff because it smells so nice. And finally, one more of the neighboring plants in the greenhouse is this wonderful Angraecum Memorial Marc Aldridge. It's got 2 big spikes pushing up, and I've been watching this one very carefully since the spikes were just starting to develop. The plant just has a presence. It just draws attention to itself somehow. But when these spikes bloom, it's going to be so, so nice. This plant is half sesquipedale, which is the Darwin orchid with enormous flowers, so really looking forward to seeing what these look like. Now here at Fantasy Orchids, they have really nice flowers, and this one is no exception. This is a Neostylus, a Vandaceous type, Fuchs Ocean Spray. It's got gorgeous blooms, and they have such a nice fragrance. It's hard to describe. It's kind of sweet, but a little spicy and floral all at the same time. And in fact, this plant is just one of my favorite little types of Vandaceous orchids. I just love the color. And at Fantasy Orchids right now, you can see in front of you all of these are those either Neostylus Fuchs Ocean Spray or the Lucernary Bluebird, which is also a very similar one. And you can see many of them have spikes, and not just one, but multiple spikes as well. So I know we're kind of getting to the end of shipping season for a lot of you. It's going to be getting cold soon, but if you are interested in a beautiful little addition to your orchid collection. Now these require high light, but if you've got good conditions for Vandas, might I suggest trying one of these. Well guys, that's just about it for today. Thank you for stopping by. In the next couple weeks, I'm going to be doing something really exciting. I'm going to be having an interview with an AOS judge, American Orchid Society judge, and we're going to be talking about the judging process and also just his opinions on his favorite orchids. So please stay tuned. I'm William Green. These are my green pets, and I'll see you next time.